G'day fellas. Today I'm going to be bringing you a fast fortress for the French. So the French are very versatile in their fast fortresses. A couple different options that they've got. The first option that they've got is the 3 cru de bois, 4 cru de bois, 700 wood, 700 coin, which is the build order that we're going to be doing. Now, when you're playing on a TP map, you're going to want to be taking that TP in Age 1. As you can see, I'm doing that now, picking up that TP. I'm sending my scout in the opposite direction. The other build order option that you've got is a market start. Now, the market start has fallen out of the meta. It's not as quick as the TP build, and as a result, it's rarely used. The only time that you're ever really using a market start is on a map where you don't actually have a TP to start with. Because I'm taking a trade post, I'm going to be doing a lot more chopping in Age 1 than I normally would. So I'm going to be prioritizing picking up food treasures. I've already scouted a couple of food treasures and a wood treasure, and instead of making my way over to that wood treasure, I want to hit that food treasure. The reason why is because my age up time may be affected if I don't grab those treasures. Now with this treasure, we're not microing it out. The trick to this treasure is that we're going to be standing right next to the treasure guardian, and we're just going to be hitting him in melee. He does reduced damage when he's in melee, and that way you're going to be able to solo the treasure guardian without too much hassle. And so just taking a quick look at the deck, so we've got everything filled out in Age 2 as well as Age 3. We've got a lot of unit shipments in Age 3, and we're going to be sending absolutely all of them. For Age 2, we've got our resource shipments if there's a longer fight than what we're expecting. But the idea here is that we're going to be sending the 3 cru de bois, 4 cru de bois, followed by the 700 wood and then the 700 coin. And then once we've aged up, depending on, whether we go musket or hussars, will depend on whether we go 8 skirms or 2 falcons as our first card. Microing the hunt, you see me microing the hunt, pushing it in and making sure that I'm taking out that back deer instead of taking out one of the front deers. It enables me to avoid having to move for the next time that I micro the hunt. Instead of going back and forth, I'm just very simply able to stand up, shoot, and then go back. So we are in a matchup against the Japanese, so because it's a Japanese and he's going to be shrining all over the map, we're not going to be doing the hussar start. So if we do a hussar start, there's really not a lot we can do to a Japanese player. He's just going to be tucked in nice and safely in his base. So we're going to be going a musket start, and we're just going to be absolutely burning through all of the shrines that he's been putting down. So now with the 2 black bears on this treasure, we're going to be bringing it out to the invisible circle, and we're going to wait for them to return. When they return, then we're going to open fire on the bears, forcing them to pause while we kill them. We try and sneak in a cheeky little crack shot in between, but we miss the first one. We do hit the second one. That way we save time on our reload animation. It does take 3 seconds for our reload animation, and then we shift click back in. So once we've hit transition, so this is a 14 villager up. This is the most common French age up time that there is. We're shifting over everybody to wood. The idea here is that we're going to be building a market as soon as possible. We're going to be researching hunting dogs, and we're going to be researching placer mines. We're also going to be gathering 125 wood so that we've got enough for steel traps once we've aged up, because we need to be able to afford steel traps, 2 houses, and a military production building. As soon as I age up, I task 2 settlers to pick up the 400 wood and send 2 forward settlers out to build my racks closer to the enemy. That way when my musketeers train, they're able to hit the shrine a lot sooner than if it was closer to my base. I research steel traps from the market and also build 2 houses. So the way that you set up your macro is going to depend on whether you're going for hussars or whether you're going for musketeers. You'll be placing more settlers on coin if you're going for hussars, and less settlers on coin if you'll be going for musketeers. Ideally, you don't ever really want to go above 300 coin, as you are going to be sending 700 coin as your final shipment in the second age, and you don't need to overgather it. The musketeers begin to burn down the shrine. My goal here is to make sure that I can burn down as many shrines that are close to my base, so that when the game reaches the early fortress stage and I've run out of hunts in my base, if I need to go looking for hunts, I'm not going to be worried about shrines on my hunts and have to move my army over to kill them. I'm able to get rid of them now. If I wasn't against the Japanese, I would have been going for a cavalry build, which would have enabled me to put pressure on the enemy by forcing their settlers to garrison inside the town centre. As the second age continues to develop, our final shipment is 700 coin. With the 700 wood, we've added 2 extra military production buildings, and we're going to be building a whole bunch of houses with it to house all the population we're going to be using once we reach the third age. Once your 700 coin has arrived, It's important to cease training units unless it's completely necessary to your survival that you do so. With the remaining military that I've got, I continue exerting pressure around the map, burning down the shrines of the Japanese. Once I've reached the third age, the first shipment I send is 2 falconets. I've got a large mass of musketeers, and I'm not worried about the enemy being able to kill my musketeers and get to my falconets. I make sure that I train skirmishers from my barracks and dragoons from my stable. This is an important combination of units that will enable me to remain competitive throughout the mid-game. The units that the enemy is most likely going to be making is Ashigaru mixed with Nanagata. Unfortunately, I found myself in a little bit of a spot up here to the north, where the opponent that I was playing against quite cleverly cut me off and prevented my safe return back towards my base. And as a result, it meant that I lost a lot of musketeers without getting any reward for it. To avoid doing this, I should have had my explorer in the appropriate position so that if I could see the enemy's forces moving, I would have been able to retreat successfully. The falconets are incredibly strong, however they are vulnerable to enemy cavalry. So it's important that when you're using them, you need to be really confident that the enemy doesn't have any cavalry nearby if you can't defend them. So in this situation, I'm able to get off a couple volleys, or a single volley, and take out a couple of enemy units. In this time, I'm confident that the enemy doesn't have any cavalry, but I know that within the next 2 minutes there's going to be cavalry on the way. So it's important that I build up my dragoon mass. Over the past few minutes, I've continued to add to my skirmisher and dragoon mass, focusing entirely on those units and making sure that I keep my falconets safe. I'm going to use my falconets to try and get pot shots off on the enemy army, and if I can't secure any shots, all I'm going to be doing is just sieging down the buildings. I'm going to start with the barracks, then with the consulate, and then move to the town centre after that. There's a couple of different ways that you can approach it by just taking the perimeter buildings first, but ideally with this combination of units, I want the enemy to come to me. As long as my falconets can survive the fight, then the victory should be mine. So it's simply just a matter of doing that. I use my skirmishers to make sure that I've got line of sight of the entire base, so that if there is a cavalry charge, I'm able to cover it in time. Speaking of cavalry charge, here it comes. The first thing we do, we move our falconets to the right. Our dragoons cover in from the left. All we're doing with our skirmishers is we're body blocking. We must protect the falconets. The fight begins to play out. The Naginata move in to take out the falconets. The falconets, they're focused on killing the enemy infantry. They shift click on each one of those so that they keep firing their volleys off. Even if, the fight continues on for a minute or two, they're just going to keep doing their thing. Unfortunately, we do lose both of our falconets. They do go down to some archer shots combined with some Nanagata pokes. But overall, it's a pretty overwhelming victory for us. We're maintaining a huge amount of units, much more than the enemy. And we're able to continue just pumping unit shipments into the enemy's base. We've got 3 cuirassiers on the way. We've got a huge mass. So the only thing that we're really missing at the moment is siege. We put our dragoons into melee mode so that they're more effective against the settlers and they can snare them. And then our skirmishers can simply just take pot shots at them. That way we can capitalize on killing more settlers and grow closer to the opponent's economic advantage and continue to minimize it. From here, we continue to rally units to the enemy's base and make sure that we continue to regroup all of our units so that we don't get caught off guard. Overall, I hope you've been able to take something away from this demonstration, and that you'll be able to utilize it or manipulate it in your own special way to help you climb the ladder in 1 vs 1. If you've enjoyed the video, I encourage you to leave a like down below, and if you've got any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Thank you for watching.